Welcome to the Aussie Game podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. Special bonus episode this evening. I've got a couple of special guests with me as well. We're going to go through our A-League men's half-season review. If you remember, at the start of the season, we did a preview, stuck our necks out with some predictions. So we're going to look back at a few of those and see how correct or incorrect we were. And we're going to have a look at all 12 A-League men's clubs and see how they're travelling so far this season. So I mentioned some special guests. Mopper, as always, joins me. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Welcome, boys. Great to be on the program to break down what has been a very interesting half of A-League with lots to talk about, plenty of topics, and it's been pretty diverse, and there's been a lot of adversity too. So it's going to be exciting to talk about where each club's at.
And joining us tonight is Ross. My dad did make one appearance on the podcast before, but he's back and he's got some opinions on where all the A-League men's clubs are at so far this season. So how are you going, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Cobber. I'm missing out on my beauty sleep, but I should be okay. I'll try and stay awake.
All right, mate. First, I want to get your takes, both of you, on the A-League men's season so far, just generally, before we go into the club-by-club analysis. We'll start with you, Mopper. What are your thoughts so far this season?
I think the most exciting thing is the closeness of the competition and seeing everyone being able to play each other, and the unknown factors that we've come across with some cracking games. Wellington sticks out against Brisbane like no one would have thought that, and I think the positive for me has probably been Perth and Brisbane. So Perth come last year, only won 4 games. Importantly, they've already won 5 with only 12 games played. So I think that's a real positive. And Brisbane's the same. They've won 5 games last year, and they've already won 5 this year. So I think for those two clubs being on the bottom last year, I think that just goes to show that the improvement that they've made the right steps. And although they've got plenty of work to do and opportunities will no doubt lay in front of them, I think it's important when you see that rise from bottom to obviously they're mid-table now, but I think from a fan's perspective, it's just good to see them back in being competitive in action. And we talk about how close the table is. I think everyone's got a chance still. Like we've seen Western Sydney last week where everyone was writing them off and being last, and then bang, they've got a win and it could go on a run again. So I think on that football part, it's been exciting. My highlights is the youth again. Like you've seen so many great young players come through that we'll talk about tonight. I think it's just so good seeing them at that early age playing senior football, and it's just great for our development of our football in Australia. I think we're gonna gain a lot from this. I've got a couple of favourite players that I've been following. It's just been so exciting, and probably the adversity of it. With all the adversity that's been thrown at the A-League this year and the challenges that we're faced, we've seen a couple of clubs, and we've seen Western United's story. We've seen Central Coast now with their story. Perth at their start of the year sacked the coach straight away. So there's been a hell of a lot of adversity, but the game still comes through, yeah? And I think that's the positive. And the football's still good and it's still improving. We're always going to get players that come in and out, but I like the likes that you've seen players come back as well. We can't just look at who exited the A-League last year. You've got some players like Oakland Ensler that's come back in the A-League looking for game time. Jenner is another one. There's still plenty of talent that's coming back both ways, because sometimes it just doesn't make the move overseas. Like we've seen a couple of the boys, Zazani and Ryan Teague, struggle overseas. And I think it's really important to note that the A-League still has plenty to offer.
Yeah, well said, mate. Particularly around those fans of some of those clubs you mentioned, like Perth and like Brisbane, who have stuck through their club through thick and thin, and even throw the Jets in there as well, who have seen the rise as well. So, credit to those fans who have stuck with their team. What about you, Ross? What's taken you so far this season?
Well, from a coach's point of view or a different aspect, a positional play that really stands out to me since I first saw a guy called Matt Ryan play. Was brought into Mariners when they had an injury and he was only about 17. He was the sort of player that the players could play back to. He'd control it with his feet and he'd distribute it either left or right foot at that age. Now, nowadays, every goalkeeper seems to play a position where he is the sweeper, and players aren't afraid to use him in tight situations because they know he can play his way out. So we have goalkeepers who have very good skills on the ground. And that's one of the things I like about the game. You watch a team like the Jets and the way they can play out of really tight situations at the back. Just one touch football and just keep it off the opposition players. And then they turn defence into counter attack, and they've got so much speed. There's so many teams that I think it's the young players that really stand out to me. I see a future with all these kids. There's some real talent, and that's the exciting part about the A-League for me. I think it's going to continue on this second half. I think there may be a few changes as far as positional play goes and on the ladder, because a lot of people will be expecting certain clubs to achieve, and I don't think they're going to do it. But that's for later. I'll put that back to you.
I look forward to hearing all about that one. But I agree with you in terms of the keepers. We've seen examples of that. Dean Bazanis, even though he's a more experienced keeper, he seems to be playing right up alongside his backline, and we know how good someone like Patrick Beach is with the ball at his feet too. So certainly something that's been popular in the A-League men so far this season. Let's go through the club by club half-season review, boys. So let's start in alphabetical order with Adelaide United. They are currently sitting 8th in the table with a record of 5 wins, 1 draw, and 6 losses. When we spoke about them in pre-season, we mentioned that there's plenty of attack, too leaky at the back, and the main one was the change of manager in terms of Ayrton Andrioli coming in for Carl Viet. I think half-season summary, pretty light at centre-back. Still, we saw Breens with an injury, and then when Kikianis was injured as well, they had to play a couple of real youngsters there at the back when they got undone by the Central Coast Mariners. Josh Smits in goal has been very solid. That's been a big plus for them. Luka Jovanovic, he continues to go from strength to strength, I think, taking his chance. I think they've been very strong at home, and Craig Goodwin's still quality. But just touching quickly on Jovanovic, he had to kind of wait for his time behind Archie Goodwin last season, but I think he's really come on and thrived. He had that success at Australian national level, I should say, over the past year as well. So I think he's gone from strength to strength, and he's really showing his worth. What do you make of him, Mopper?
Oh, look, I think that he's got invaluable experience. The Asia Cup was fantastic for the 20s, and we've seen him play a lot with Toure in that tournament, played a major part, and he got some exposure at the World Cup too, which was fantastic. And then we've seen him get exposed now the 23s on international stage. So I think Jovanovic's development's been fantastic. It's been a great year for him, and he's put that back into form, hasn't he? And Adelaide really needed this because they've lost a lot of key players from last year. We were concerned at the start of how much they'd lost, but I think with Jovanovic's goals and Goodwin's leadership and some really youthful development, and I think that that's where Ayrton's come in, because again he's had that connection to the club and Adelaide, and it's really made a massive difference. And you can't rule out how good Adelaide are at home. Their home fans have been great again. We've seen more growth and stability within the home crowds, and they're performing really well in front of them. So I think it's a good pass mark for Adelaide. I think they're achieving exactly probably where we thought they'd achieve.
Yeah, like along with Luka Jovanovic, a couple of other youngsters who are performing really well. Ethan Alagic, he's been really good this season. He's currently away with the under-23s. And Kikianis too at the back. And as mentioned before, Josh Smits in goal has been very solid and made a big difference to their campaign. It's such a, as you mentioned, Cooper Stadium just such a good atmosphere, particularly on a Friday night. They continue to pack out that stadium, and I've seen several foreigners now say that what a great stadium, and that kind of the profile of stadium is kind of perfect for the A-League. So probably something to think about for clubs going forward if they can get that kind of 15,000 capacity and start to pack it out. But Ross, what have you made of Adelaide United so far this season?
Well, again, they're probably one of my favourite sides to watch. Whenever I read games coming up, and I know there's a Friday night game, and Adelaide's playing at Cooper Stadium. For other teams, that must be a frightening place to go because the crowds or the fans there, Adelaide, just make it feel like you're really playing away from home and you are crowded by the opposition, whether they be on the field or whether they be in the stands. They're all around you, and they lift that side. With the younger players, again, they've been producing young players out of that academy for years, and they're still doing it. And they're not afraid to reach in and pull a player out, a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, and give him time on the field towards the end of the game, and just blend them in. And they're just getting better. They're just a hard side to beat at Coopers. But when you get them away from home, I think it's a different setup. They they might struggle against some of the big clubs. That's just my opinion.
I like that about the youth. I think the Socceroos were playing against New Zealand. I think Adelaide had the highest representation. It's proven the depth and the talent that they've produced over time. So credit to that state and credit to that club and the connection they have.
Yeah, I think throw in a few more youngsters there. Luke Dazelle in the midfield there with Ethan Allegich has been very good this season. We saw Panache Madania and Ryan White link up the other day. Unfortunately, Dylan Prayas, I think, is a big out for them down that right. He played almost like a winger more so than a fullback, but just that combination that he's had with a couple of players in his time with Adelaide United, just so dangerous. And yeah, he's fortunately got a long-term injury, but yeah, he's a big miss for them. But look, I think they'll be there and thereabouts around finals. I have predicted them to finish 7th. I'm probably sticking around that, if I'm honest. Moppy, you had them 8th. What do you make of your preseason prediction?
Mate, I'm spot on. They're 8th now.
They're 8th now, but what about the end of the season, mate?
No, still 8th. Still 8th. They're right where I think they are going to finish.
And what about you, Ross?
I think Adelaide will probably finish a little bit higher. I've got them at 6th. I just think, depending on the fact that they've just got to strengthen that defence at times when they play against, the better sides. Like against, to me, Auckland, are a very hard side to play against. So that's the sort of side that Adelaide may struggle against.
All right, let's leave Adelaide there. Let's move over to that club, Auckland. Currently first. Big shock, that one. Their record is 7 wins, 3 draws, 2 losses. Both of those losses have come to the Jets. Pre-season we looked at, class team, very solid in defence, physically dominant. Started last season with 6 straight wins, obviously in their inaugural season. Looking at the halfway point, solid again. Have seen some vulnerabilities, probably not as solid as last season. Yet to win after conceding first, that's an amazing stat for me. Lockie Brook's been amazing. Jesse Randall, Sam Cosgrove, they've added consistent goals, but not as clinical as they probably could have been in front of goal. Best away record so far this season, unbeaten. Whether they're missing Alex Paulson, maybe. Michael Vowd's done a decent job in goals, but yeah, what do you think of Auckland, Ross? How do you think they've been going this season?
Well, to me, Auckland are too well balanced. They're the team that have everything, and they're getting their captain back now, back in defence. That will strengthen their defence, and I think they'll be an incredibly hard side to score against. They're strong in midfield, and now with Cosgrove up front, you've got the height. I think he's going to score more goals, and once he gets into the idea of the game here in Australia, he's going to start putting them away. There's lots of things that they can do in that side, and I just think going forward, they're just very strong. They're well balanced. It's a well balanced side all round. What about you, Mopper?
I think off the field and on the field, they're outstanding. Operating off the field and the connection, the business model and their ownership is just world class. And it's you can see that all the way through the structure at Auckland FC. You've seen Auckland come into the competition at the beginning and they fell apart, but this ownership group has got it. They've connected to the community. Their marketing has been fantastic. The crowds are there. They are a professional unit, and this model is leading the way in the A-League. And their football reflects it. The coach is reflecting it, and the players are reflecting it. So I think when you've got it right at the top, it'll just flow down to the bottom and on the pitch, and that's what's happening. And Auckland just a class above everyone, I believe, even with this salary cap, because they're just smarter and better run than other clubs. And you can see that with the community and the connection, the crowd, and they're going to be hard to beat. I do agree with you, Chief. Though they are a bit more vulnerable. They only lost 3 times last year, and they've lost twice already this year, and they've got Sydney in that makeup game. So they are a little bit more vulnerable. Maybe that's because of some of the changes, but I definitely agree with your opinion on that one. But again, that just shows, I think, the league being a little bit better and tighter. And maybe Newcastle set the blueprint for how you beat Auckland FC. And I'm pretty sure if I was a coach, I'd be looking at that blueprint to see that fast speed of the movement that Newcastle present. Maybe the way to counterattack and beat Auckland, who are very structured and very well possessioned and very well structured when they've got the ball and without it.
Even go back to last season, mate, Western United were one of the teams that beat them last season, and they would have set up pretty similar, I would say, looking to sit in and get them on the break. Perth were the other one that beat them, which is just mind-boggling how that happened. But some of the best players, I think, so far this season for Auckland, Lockie Brook, probably started a little bit slow, but definitely found his feet now. Jesse Randall, class. Sam Cosgrove, as you mentioned, Ross, been really good. Francis de Vries, Mr. Consistent. He might be one of the best players in the whole league, actually. Louis Vistrada, very strong in that midfield. And I think Jake Gilbert-Reich's done pretty well in their defence. He was dropped at a time, but I think he's been pretty solid alongside Dan Hall as well. I actually picked them to finish first, and I don't think I'm wavering away from that decision. What about you, Mopper?
Yeah, definitely first. I know Sydney's got a game in hand, but there's just too much depth and talent, and they can handle all situations. So, yeah, remain first for me.
And you, Ross?
Yeah, I've got them first. I just can't see another side that can really worry them in a big game. And I think once you get closer to finals and semi-finals, etc., they're the big games, and that's where the big clubs perform, I think. And I think Auckland, as like Mopper said, they are the big team, the big club. They'll be very hard to beat.
Mopper, I'll throw this one to you first, and I'll get your opinion as well, Ross. But do you think Steve Corica gets enough credit for what he's done with that group?
Oh, absolutely. I think from the football community who know the game, and like you've already seen his development at Sydney FC and his longevity at Sydney FC and what he did for them. I think he had a very successful stint at Sydney FC. I just think it's the Auckland's probably picked him up because he's the right type of leader and the right style of football for what they want to produce. And I think this is probably Corica's, he would be in the window for me is he willing to take the next step? Because he's definitely been proven at home. And I think that's credit based on the organisation development at Sydney. And then I think he's gone to another level with a really top professional run club at Auckland FC. And they're very smart to get him because obviously his track record speaks for himself.
And what about you, Ross? I probably asked the question because I feel there's a sense that he piggybacked off what Graham Arnold did at Sydney FC a little bit, but now he's kind of doing all of this on his own, alongside some great support, including his former teammate Terry McFlynn too.
Yeah, I think he's got a good coaching staff alongside him. I think with Corica, he reads the game well. He always read it well as a player. He did so at Sydney as well as a coach. And I think you can see with Auckland, the way Corica speaks to his players, he speaks to them with respect. And I think he's a motivator for the younger players associated with that club. I just think he's done a great job. And he should be patted on the back as far as acknowledged for what he's achieved.
All right, let's move on to Brisbane Roar, currently 5th in the table. Their record is 5 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses. At the start of the season, we looked at the previous season, very slow start to the season, a bit of a shocker. 1 clean sheet all of last season, very few home wins, and the news of Michael Valkanis coming in to replace Ruben Zadkovic at the halfway point. Michael Valkanis has definitely put the Roar back in Brisbane. They're tough, they work hard, and they get results. I think Lucas Harrington's going to be a massive miss for them, unfortunately. They've just ended a really tough run of games with some injuries having an impact for sure. And just announced today, actually, J. O'Shea out for 4 weeks. And him alongside Milorad Stojic at the start of the season was so solid. And I think that's going to be a massive miss for them, Upper.
Oh, definitely. But like, as I said previously, you got to give them credit because they only got 21 points last year, finished second last, and they're 18 points already with the same amount of wins as what they all achieved all of last season. So I think credit to Brisbane. Valkanis has brought some really strong mentality and really passion for his football and the way they've set up, like you said, defensively. They've just got to balance that out now, though. They've had some adversity with that draw we talked about with those 4 away games in 10 days. And they've had some adversity not only on the pitch but off the pitch. And they can't let that get sucked into that game. Yeah, they've got to get their balance right with this so they can become a little bit more professional with that and manage it better. Because as I said, if you put it out there, you're just going to be targeted. So and you're just open to criticism. So they've got to show a bit more resilience mentality wise because they've definitely got it in abundance. But put the energy on the pitch and let that football do your talking because he's definitely done a great job there. But I think the media are now starting to take a little bit of an open talk to it, like what happened with Central Coast. So he just needs to control it. And if it can control it, I think they'll go up a next level. The biggest problem that they've got is Harrington's gone. And how are they going to replace that? I think now the transfer window's open. And like you said, they've got O'Shea out. They've got to address these issues because the depth isn't there. They do have I like a couple of youngsters on the bench though, but again, they're going to have to step up, but I think they need a little bit more behind but for me, A+ for them from where they were last year to now.
Yeah, fair point, mate. I think in terms of the toughness and the grit, I think also not just the media, but potentially their opposition might be looking at that as well and thinking this is how we get at Brisbane. If we can toe the line a little bit and push them over the edge, as long as we're controlled, it might be something that they're looking at. I just want to quickly bring in some feedback from one of the Raw fans, Jacob. So thank you, Jacob, for your comment. He said the Raw have been absolutely crucified by the APL, giving us the worst fixture scheduling in the league, 4 away games in a row during December into 4 games in 10 days. Raw also asked for the City game not to be the week it was, but the APL put it then anyway. So, and then Cameron also added to that as well. And after those 4 games in 10 days, we have to go away to Perth. Just not good enough. So I think I sympathise with both those guys because it is a tough draw for them, and particularly those 4 games in such close succession. It's really put a strain on the squad. What have you made of Brisbane so far this season, Ross?
I see Brisbane as a side initially motivated again by Valkanis. He got behind them and he basically said, "Be proud of the club you are. Be proud of the player, the club you represent." The fans have got behind them. The fans love them, and that's good to see for football. You need to get Brisbane being a side that brings the fans in because that's where we do need them is in Queensland. But as far as this year goes, I think the loss of Harrington, J. O'Shea out for 4 weeks, it puts terrible holes in that side. But if I'm the opposition coach, I know players out there that represent Brisbane that I can get in their head and upset them just by talking to them or hitting them a bit harder in a tackle maybe. But that's where they've just got to keep their head and just be intelligent as far as the way they play. They've got the players, but I just think they're going to fade away in this second stage of the season. I've got them finishing 8th, which is probably a surprise, but I just don't think, in comparison to a lot of the other clubs, they've got it. Not at the moment, anyway. And like Mopper said, maybe they've got to try and get some players in.
Yeah, I think this is where Valkanis' experience is going to come in to, make sure that they're on the right side of that line in terms of aggression and physicality, but not stepping over the edge. So, we'll see how that plays out for the remainder of the season. A couple of their top players for me, Milorad Stojic, before he got injured. Justin Vidic, I think, has been pretty good up front for them. Sam Klein continues to perform really well. Jay O'Shea is going to be a massive miss. Houston Salas, the fullback's done really well, I thought, as has James McGarry, and then, Lucas Harrington. Massive miss for them. So I had them 9th at the start of the season. I think they'll finish a little bit higher than that. What about you, Mopper?
Yeah, I think they can finish probably. I did have them 9th as well, but I think they could probably finish 7th, but only if they do some work in the transfer market, because I think the next 4 games they've got an opportunity. Like, I don't mind them playing Perth away. I think they're probably at that level. They've got Adelaide at home, Newcastle away, and Central Coast at home. So I think the next 4 weeks they've got a good draw, and I think they've got an opportunity, but they'll have to build with that squad. They make a signing or two, they'll be up around that 6th or 7th mark. But I think if they don't make a signing and stay where they are, I think they're still going to be around that 9th. But it'll all depend in the next couple of weeks whether they can pull someone in. There's definitely a few players being discussed around who's available, and a lot of people looking for loans. So I'm sure if they're working behind the scenes, they need to jump on it and quick.
Yeah, agree with that. All right, let's move on to the Central Coast Mariners. Sorry, Ross, but we need to get to them. Position is 12th, bottom of the ladder. Their record so far is 3 wins, 2 draws, 7 losses. In the preseason, we identified a lack of goals and experience from last season. A young, promising side, but may struggle over the course of the season. Mark Jackson, of course, left just before the start of the season, with Warren Moon coming in. He's just signed a permanent deal after being their interim manager. End of last season, they won just one of their last 14 games to end with a bit of a whimper. And probably the biggest news in terms of the half season summary for them is what's come out the last couple of days. So the APL has taken over the management of the Central Coast Mariners on an interim basis. While a sales process is completed, the operator of the Central Coast Mariners notified the APL of the forfeiture of the club participation agreement. And with this, the APL has taken the proactive action to terminate the CPA. Now, there seems to be further developments today, or at least reported, that the Central Coast Mariners Academy have gone into liquidation, which is very, very sad news. Started with a huge win over the Jets this season, but have won just twice since. They've been competitive in most games as the young players continue to get their opportunity. Ali Orgler coming in, hopefully is going to add some attacking flair. And they might be difficult for young players to run out the season. Andrew Redmayne has been really huge for them, has certainly kept them in a lot of games and even won them some games thinking back to that F3 derby. So we better go to the Mariners supporter on the panel. Ross, where are you at in terms of the Mariners this season?
Well, I'll give you an idea of mainly with what I've heard in the last couple of days from the Mariners fans, sort of in contact with a few of those on Facebook, and I sort of get the gist of what's happening up there. I think it's very sad. To me, it just comes along as a great sadness. There's no finances at the club. It's a major worry for the people who love the club up there at Gosford, and I would hate to see a problem where what happened to Western United, I would hate to see something similar happen to Mariners. I just think, again, while they didn't get big crowds, but they had passionate fans, and it's a club that's been there right from the start, and they've had good seasons. But the academy, that's where they produced players, and that's where the talent came. And for that to not be financial, I think there's a major problem. The word is that QPR
Yeah,
at one stage made had a look. I don't know whether that's gone through any further.
I think for me, and I hope that it's true, but potentially the silver lining from this announcement is that this is all temporary from the APL. They've come in here in order to manage a process for a sale of the club, because as you mentioned, QPR were interested at a time, and there are some other interested parties reportedly as well. So I hope that that is the case, and that we're not we're not going down the direction that we've seen from some other clubs in the past, and that this is simply a transition over. But the announcement of the academy being put into liquidation is huge, Mopper, because we've seen so much talent come out of that academy over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's why they've been successful over the last 20 years, because young players and young talent have got their opportunity there, and they've thrived on it. And it's been Central Coast's probably backbone for the whole 20 years. It's unbelievable what they've achieved in this time, isn't it? And it's all down to that player development and giving kids an opportunity. And haven't we seen some players go overseas and develop from the Central Coast Mariners? We talked about Adelaide just prior, but yeah, geez, Central Coast Mariners are right up there, and it's been a breeding ground up there, and it's kept them competitive. They've faced a lot of adversity though, haven't they, over the last 20 years? We've seen a lot of this, but the warning signs were there, weren't they, at the start of the year? This is probably the worst it's ever been, and you've seen the massive changes they had. You got an interim coach there. The writing was on the wall financially, and they're in a lot of trouble. And hopefully, the early action of the APL, or I would say early in meaning they're trying to keep this afloat and get a buyer, will no doubt see hopefully the Central Coast survive. And like they've been in this difficult position before, and I think they'll face more adversity again. They are this year, but I can't believe what they've done this year, considering, we talked about they've hardly brought any players in. And again, they've just got this streamline, these kids come through. Redmayne's been a serious leader up there, and credit to him for that. And whoever's working behind the scenes, because I can't believe they've won 3 games, they only won 5 last year. They've already won 3 and been competitive. So I think it's been an unbelievable story from the players and coaches' point of view that they've been fronting up. It's been difficult for them. You can see it in the interviews, how mentally draining this situation is. But look, let's hope for a quick resolution. The APL can find a buyer, because I tell you what, the big thing is, and you can see it with QPR and Portsmouth and all that, that they're seeing the A-League as a breeding ground, but not only that, a good market at a good price to develop and sell on talent. So I think they'd be silly not to take an opportunity where you've seen Silvera, you've seen Max Ballard, how many players have come through there? Matt Ryan, you said, Ross, like Trent Sainsbury, Socceroo, the list just goes on and on and on. Jacob Farrell, so I'm pretty sure the smartness of these championship sides and Premier League clubs, and you can see what, Bill Foley's done with Auckland. They're there because they know there's a market here and we can produce talent, and it's good value for money for them, rather than paying top end price.
Definitely agree.
So I wish all the Mariners the best. And I know the fans are going to have to go through this period, but I think the light will be at the end of the tunnel, and I think the APL is taking the right action in trying to get this sale done. Unfortunately, sales aren't easy, are they? You've got to go through a lot of process, so it'll probably drag out a little bit, but the quicker they can get this back on track, watch out for the Mariners next year, and hopefully can bring the fans back the joy, because they've had to put up with a lot, but they've also had a lot of success too. So, it's balanced out over the 20 years that they've been there.
All right, let's go to FanView. I asked the Marty Mariner show for some positives from the season. So they mentioned, I think Redmayne's been a lot better than many expected. I tend to agree with that as well. Brad Tapp, he's a talent and proves every week he's destined for bigger things. Glimpses of talent, just not the consistency. So yeah, a couple of those players performing really well. Alfie McCalmon, Andrew Redmayne's been great. Miguel DePizio, Lucas Moragas, and Brad Tapp. Great to see him back after his long-term injury. Bit of interest in Lucas Moragas, apparently, in terms of some overseas clubs too. But so it just shows you, again, there's still producing these players or at least recruiting them and developing them. Hayne Eames, another one on the books. I think he's still 17, but plenty of opportunity for these kids coming through the Mariners. And let's hope that whatever needs to be done is done, and they continue to thrive going forward. Start of the season, I predicted them coming last. I mentioned in that preview show that I didn't have them last until Mark Jackson stepped aside just before the start of the season. But I thought it was always going to be a tough season for them. What about you, Mopper?
No, definitely last. This is going to be too much turmoil for them to bounce back. But I give them 100% credit for what they've been doing every week. That they've been doing a fantastic job for their community and their club.
And what about you, Ross?
Yes, as much as it hurts, I've got them. I can't see them getting past, clubs like Perth, anyone in front of them, really. I just can't see them achieving it. I can't see them even getting past Wellington at the moment. The young kids, and you mentioned Eames, it's great to see him back starting now. And he's in the centre of midfield. Good kid, and they've got so much young talent. So
yeah, absolutely, Ross, and I love DePizio too. These kids are going to go. Yeah, it's fantastic. So the pipeline's always there, and look, hopefully the government and or local communities can step in to save that academy.
I hope so.
Okay, boys, we'll leave the Mariners there, and let's go to the MacArthur Bulls. Currently sitting third. Their record is 5 wins, 4 draws, 4 losses. Pre-season, we spoke about poor finish to last season with just 2 wins from February after losing so many key players in January. They did make the Australia Cup semi-finals before being beaten by the Jets. They picked up Anthony Caceres from Sydney FC, probably their big signing over the break, but they picked up a few others as well. In terms of looking at them halfway through the season, I think they've juggled the ACL2 commitments quite well. They started with a loss, but got back on track pretty quickly and then ended up topping that group. They've got a solid midfield group, particularly Bratton, Rose and Caceres in there. Really experienced defence. The forward line's been pretty good, particularly Harry Sawyer and Rafa Duran, but it'll be interesting to see how Mitch Duke fits in with those guys, or who ends up leading the line. Harry Politeti's out for the season, I think, is a big one for me. He was really good down that left. But I'll go to you first, Ross. What do you made of the Bulls this season?
I've been impressed, mainly because of the fact that they're playing in 2 competitions in Asia and with the league. I'm just wondering whether the extra games or the impact of that build-up continuing in through the second stage of the competition may be too much for them. I hope not, because I like the way they play. I think Mitch Duke will be a big factor for them, probably a little bit bigger than a lot of people expect. But the Caceres, their midfield with Caceres and Rose, and they've got just strength in there.
Similar standouts for me, Harry Politeti's before he got injured. I think Bratton, Caceres and that midfield have been showing all of their experience. The big man up front, Harry Sawyer, and then Bernardo on the left as well. I thought he's been good too.
Oh, mate, the Bermuda Triangle, isn't it? Rose, Bratton and Caceres. They're just swallowing up teams, Chief. And
I was wondering where you're going with that.
Their experience and the value of that experience in the A-League and at the top level has seen them carve through. And they're adding to their attack, which I think is very important with Duke. Just polishes them off. It'll be interesting to see how they fit in with that formation. But I think they're a little bit defensive weakness there. And I think if they want to push those top 2, they're going to have to me, get a centre-back and get someone really strong in there at the leadership at the back. I think they've shown vulnerabilities against the top teams, and they have leaked a goal here and there. And I know ACL's played a part, but the group level's over now. That back and forth, you've got a round of 16 now, so you've got 2-legged ties. So I'm not concerned about Asian Champions League because I think it'll just there's a good enough gap in between now, and they've got more depth now. But I think if they sign one more central defender, watch out. They'll be pushing the top 2, no doubt. I think where they're sitting now, third, is where where they're perfectly situated. To be honest, I think that's where they are, and that's where they'll probably finish. But they've definitely got some ability, and I think with Duke coming in, that's a fantastic signing just to challenge that top three, just to be more clinical. But I think they were a bit unlucky against Sydney FC. They got them 6 games in 23 days, and Sydney come off fresh. So I don't think we've shown, like against the top teams, we haven't been able to show their best. But I think they'll bounce back from that one, and they've got a great tie of round of 16 against Bangkok, and I think they'll have a great opportunity to progress forward with the A-League and in Asia as well.
Yeah, very balanced squad throughout, experience kind of all over the pitch, but blended in with some nice youth as well. Vickery on the right, either starting or off the bench, has been pretty dynamic for them as well. And I think just, if you've got mobility around you with the types of players like Bratton, Caceres, and like even Rose is, he's really shown this season that he's got that killer ball in him as well. So whether that's up to the height of Sawyer or in behind for players to run onto, they're pretty dangerous once you give those midfielders some time. So I had them third at the start of the season. I think they'll probably be around that mark still. Moppy, you had them second. Are you sticking with that?
I think they'll push the top two, but I think looking at their result against Sydney, they'll probably remain third and probably fight it out. It'd be interesting to see Sydney FC and Auckland what happens from that, whether MacArthur can gain some ground. But yeah, I definitely think they're second or third. They're a high caliber team and got a lot of depth, which a lot of clubs don't have, and I think that'll help them in the Asian Champions League as well.
Ross, your prediction for where they'll finish?
I had them fourth, mainly because I was looking at the Asia Championships as well and the extra games. But as Mopper said, it's lengthened a bit, and maybe they got the players. I tell you, especially like you say in the midfield there, there's so much experience, and with the players out wide, they can put holes in sides. That's for sure. So anyway, I'll just say that they'll probably end up fourth.
All right. Let's go to Melbourne City. They're currently sixth. Their record is 4 wins, 5 draws, and 4 losses. Start of the season, we looked at Vidmar having his doubters, but led his side to the championship. Built on a stingy defence last season, they didn't concede many at all. They also dealt with a huge injury crisis, but we were wondering if that's going to pay off long term in terms of these youngsters being thrown into the deep end and having to get their way through. In terms of looking at halfway through the season, they've been really good in the ACL Elite competition. We saw the Mariners really struggle their last season, but they've been really good. League form has been a bit underwhelming, particularly recently when we thought that they might have a bit of a gap in their ACL Elite commitments and they haven't taken advantage of it. They've only won 2 of 7 at home. Still really strong defensively, conceding less than a goal a game, and they have the most clean sheets in the league. Dealing with a lot of injuries at the moment, but just announced today, Ryan Teague has just signed until the end of the season. Mopper, what a good pick-up that is for Melbourne City.
Wow. That is game-changing. What about that? Linking up with maybe Truan to cover the back four. Wow, that's huge. What a pickup. Is that on loan or did they buy him?
That's on loan for the rest of the season, yeah. So great move for Teague.
Smart. Yeah. Smart move by Teague as well, because obviously he'll get Champions League now as well, which is exactly what he needs, because he's missed the first half of the season, unfortunately not getting any time. But now he's got Asian Champions League to look after against high caliber teams, and the A-League, we know what a class player is. And wow, that links up, beats Truan and Teague, with Nabut and Caputo. That's a dangerous side. They already were dangerous, but yeah, look, I know they've been misfiring, and I know the fans have been saying they need more goals, but I think they need to play Nabut and Caputo together, use them as target men, play them together, and they'll score more goals, and let Bates get that, and Atkinson get down and provide some football for him and get some crosses in. I think they'll be very dangerous, and then let the 8s and the 10s come in behind and pick off the scraps, because I think he needs to tweak that formation to make it work. I think Mehmeti is a fantastic talent, but I think You need the likes of Caputo, who's had the experience at under 20 level, Asia Cup and World Cup, and he knows 5 goals already this year and play more in the Asian Champions League. He's got to start linking up with Naboot, and Vidmar's got to trust playing the two together.
All right, I'm just going to quickly grab the view of Aiden, who's a Melbourne City fan. He said that he's less concerned than our position suggests, but we need goals. Import recruitment has been poor, compounded by injuries, missing an X factor in attack akin to like a Tilio, and not signing creativity at number 8 is haunting us. Teague might help, so yes, I think he certainly will help with that. Beach and Kewen outstanding. Ferreira, Truan too. So yeah, tend to agree with all of those players that he's mentioned. What have you made of Melbourne City, Ross? They're currently 8th, but do you expect them to rise up the ladder in the latter part of the season?
I do expect them to rise. I think they're the side who are good to watch. Just the way they play football, they play one touch. They look defensively, they look rock solid to me anyway. But I just thought they needed to tidy up their forward line. Maybe they've got to learn to finish their chances. I saw them play so many games, create so many chances, but without putting the ball in the back of the net. But perhaps a couple of new signings, and I just think they will rise. I've got them finishing 3rd in the competition.
No.
I just think they're that good.
No, they're a fantastic unit when they're playing well. I think they've just been misfiring a little bit, and I think if you give the likes of a Max Caputo the service, I think he's going to finish more often than not. I had them finishing 2nd. I don't think they'll be that high, but still definitely in finals. What about you, Mopper?
Yeah, look, I think to probably 4th, they'll be probably challenge Macarthur. You only look at the table, and they're only 2 points behind Macarthur with the games played. So, and they're in 3rd. So we're talking about nothing there. And 5 points behind Sydney, but Sydney got the games in hand, but one of them's Auckland. So, and then only 7 points off the top. With Teague's addition, it's a game changer, and this could mean the difference. I still think if Vidmar looks at now how they set up, that those young players have created, they've had some chances. They're just lacking a bit of experience, aren't they? And trying to balance out their football between Asia and A-League, and it's probably really good experience for the young players, and they'll grow from this. You've got a bit of a gap, haven't they? You've got a lot of youth, and I think with Teague's experience, I think a little bit of leadership in there. Well, and then they've got the best, like I said, Truan and Beach, just are probably the 2 most outstanding footballers in the A-League this year. So they're fantastic talents.
Yeah, Teague coming in, is certainly going to be a huge addition for Melbourne City. And if he's anything like the player that left at the end of last A-League season, Melbourne City fans can look forward to some outstanding performances. And he's going to really run that midfield. Should make the Melbourne derby very interesting. The next one coming up. And let's go over to his former club, Melbourne Victory, who are currently sitting in 7th. Their record is 5 wins, 2 draws, and 5 losses. In terms of preseason, what we spoke about, Arthur Dillis turned around a slow start to get Victory all the way to the final, where they lost to their crosstown rivals, Melbourne City. Strong home record last season. They haven't won the A-League since 2018, which is a big gap for such a big club. Big losses in the off-season, Casey Boss, Ryan T, Daniel Arzani, Zinedine Mashash, but they topped up pretty well with Louis Dorigo, Keegan Jelicic, Seb Esposito, Jason Davidson, Denny Jonro, Matt Grimaldi, and Juan Mata. So I think at the halfway point, slow start again for them, only won 1 in their first 7. Arthur Dillis was under huge pressure. They've since hit back and 4 in a row before losing to the Wanderers on the weekend. Yeah, I think the difference between their best and their worst so far has been a pretty big gap. I think Juan Mata has been brilliant for them this season. They love a consistent goal scorer. I think Fergus, very streaky type of striker that we've seen. Still looking for that right balance in front of their defence, but they've just brought in a Japanese attacker, Charles Nduka, who's signed. very interesting way, but it's identified by Jamestown and analytics. So a bit of Moneyball stuff going on there, Mopper, with the new Japanese striker. But yeah, what do you made of Melbourne Victory so far?
Well, I think the player recruitment cost them at the start. They brought in players too late, didn't they? We talked about this pre-season that the signings that they made were riding the brink. So they never had a good pre-season. They never had a good Hung Cup or friendlies to really build on, and that's probably contributed to the start. Then they found their mojo. They found the right balance in their football. But then on the weekend, they've just lost a few players to obviously Australia's under 23s, and a couple of injuries has cost them, hasn't it? And look, it's great that they've made that signing with the attacker, but they need a central defender and a defensive midfielder. They would be spewing Teague's gone to Melbourne City, but as I think with Duke and Teague, their Socceroo hopefuls are pinning their hopes on what Melbourne City and Macarthur have got, which is Asian football, and Melbourne Victory don't offer that. So they would be absolutely ropeable at Teague's over there because he fits the bill of what they need. But they've gone out and signed an attacker. So, yeah, look, a bit strange, but maybe there's more signings to come. If they fix that defensive part up, there's no doubt this attack and what they've got there and players they've got in that front third and just behind, probably the best in the A-League. They're lethal, yeah. But defensive transition, I've been critical of it all year. They've picked it up in the last few weeks, apart from last week. There's been a lot more pressure on the ball, lot more stability. But if they've lost those couple of key players for a few weeks, they might be taking another small hit. But definitely have the attacking players to threaten. But they're not the complete football team for me, and I think they'll remain just around that playoff mark until they correct those defensive priorities.
Yeah, I think Louis Dorigo and Jordi Valadon in that, if they're kind of going okay, I think they're all right in that holding midfield. But I think, yeah, trying to plug those holes with those attack-minded players. You mentioned the position they do need, but I still think they need a striker because, yeah, as I said, Virgos has been streaky. Jing Reese, yeah, he hasn't scored in the A-League for quite some time. So I just don't think – I think a 9 that's going to bang away a few goals for them if this player is going to do that would be ideal. But I guess we'll see how it pans out for the rest of the season. Just before I get your thoughts, Ross, I'm just going to share a fan view from Sean. So he said, rough start, but confident we can still make finals. Biggest highlights being Mata, and feels that no doubt that he is improving the youth at the club, and personally hope he retires and has a role with the club off the pitch. Gutted with T going to Melbourne City with how little game time he's had in Europe. And and he thought that also Waimata, if Teague was to go back to Melbourne Victory, he could have got a lot from Waimata as well. But yeah, that's interesting thoughts from Sean. What have you made of Melbourne Victory so far this season, Ross?
Well, I can see Melbourne Victory improving, and I've got that they're definitely going to improve. I think with Mata in the midfield, he can sort of control everything that happens around that midfield. A lot of the younger players are learning from him continually. It's just finishing. It's up front. It's one day is good, next following week is no good. They need a really good finisher, like you were saying. They need a number 9 who can put the ball in the back of the net. They create so many chances. They put holes in other defences. They just can't finish it. But you'll be surprised. I've got them finishing second.
Oh, that's huge.
So
come on.
I just think there'll be a lot of sides which will be surprised by Victory as they continue to improve.
Just want to touch on your point about their striker, because like how many strikers have we seen over the years at Melbourne Victory that bang away the goals, like Archie Thompson, Bessa Berisha, Bruno Fornaroli, Ola Toivonen. Like, I think it's an expectation from the Melbourne Victory fans that they have clinical finisher in the 9. So yeah, they just haven't had it. They chopped and changed between Virgos and Fornaroli last year, but I think there's a real pressure and expectation on the player that's leading the line for Melbourne Victory.
I think the fans in Melbourne Victory have got, again, they're a club that have got brilliant passionate fans. They love the club. They love the players. But finishing their chances, I've seen so many games where they've dominated. They've created 10, 15 chances and possibly got one. That sort of thing. They don't have that finisher. And like every club in the world will tell you, they're gold if you can find one.
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
Yes.
Any outstanding players for you from Melbourne Victory, Mopper?
Vupale's been the reason why they've changed their form, and he's just a superstar. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the Socceroos side. I know he's one of Popper's favourites. He looks sharp, and he's only been back 4 or 5 weeks now, but he's made a massive difference in that squad, and just needs protection. And they just, I'm still concerned about their defensive frailties, but Vupale for me is, Socceroo through and through, and you watch. Can't wait to see him back. Got no doubt he'll be in the March. March will be announced, and I'm pretty sure he'll keep his A-League form up there and have a good charge home.
I'm not quite as bold as Ross picking them for second. I had them sixth. I think they'll be around that mark still. And what about you, Mopper?
Yeah, no, I had them as fourth, but I'm dropping them down. I just don't think. I think the top four for me is they're too well balanced. They've got too much depth in Auckland, Sydney, Macarthur, and City now with Teague. Just too good. I think they'll be sixth, fifth at best.
All right, let's go to the high-flying Jets. They're currently sitting fourth in the table. What about this record? 6 wins, 0 draws, and 6 losses. Doesn't that just summarise the Jets and how their season has gone? So in pre-season, we looked at Robbie Stanton being replaced by Mark Milligan. They were, of course, the Australia Cup winners. Last season, they definitely showed glimpses of what's possible, but lapses of concentration cost them. They had a better away record than a home record, which sucks for their fans. Eli Adams was the star player, scoring some absolutely cracking goals, and hasn't he done that again this season? Big ins, including Alex Battolato, Max Burgess, plus some scholarship deals, including your man Mopper, Xavier Bertoncello. Mid-season review, slow start, just 1 win from their first 5. It was a thumping 5-2 win over Melbourne Victory before winning 5 of their next 7. So they've definitely gone on a run, including beating Auckland twice. Their attack and fearlessness football has been a breath of fresh air to the league. Some outstanding performances from some of their youngsters. They've scored the most and conceded the most, so they're highly entertaining. And just in the last couple of days have signed Zach Clough on a 2.5-year deal. No doubt he will fill the void of Alex Battolato. But been impressed with the Jets so far this season, Mopper?
The Jets have been fantastic to watch. We've seen a great Hahn Cup run, which they were successful on. There was high expectations, weren't they, whether they could continue that on in the A-League. And they haven't disappointed with their football. Their fast ball movement's just been fantastic to watch. As a football fan, you just got to love that stuff. And surprised and a bit disappointed about the Newcastle fans not getting out in more numbers. I think they deserve it, the way they're playing. I think Mark Milligan, what a breath of fresh air in the coaching ranks, has been a great addition by Newcastle. They're definitely on the right track. The vulnerability, obviously, they've got a lot of youth. And, defensively and physically, they just can't match it and can't transition and close that space down quick enough, because obviously we know their starting positions and finishing positions when they're in attack, but defensively they need a bigger body in there. But I don't think Mark Milligan's going to be too concerned about that. He's very Ange-like in the way he plays, but definitely need a central defender or a 6, because if they don't, it could cost them, I think, to get up higher up the ladder. But again, there's some great kids in here, isn't there? We're going to be talking about a few of these players for a very long time, because I tell you what, if any scouts are watching, they're going to definitely pick up on 3 or 4 of these Jet stars, because they are next level.
Yeah, just go to a quick fan view. This is from Agmub Wub Weem. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. Jets are still missing some key reinforcements, mainly support in midfield and a potential visa centre-back to push the current crop. That being said, the team is playing phenomenally and with incredible passion I've never seen before, and week after week seem to be gelling better. Certainly agree with that. And I agree with his next point as well. Will Dobson is the GOAT and will be in Europe before we know it. Absolutely agree with that. And then we had a shout out from A-League prospects as well, saying he's a neutral, but regarding the Newcastle Jets, Alex Badalado is an incredible player for this level. So yeah, very sad that we're not going to be seeing him for the rest of this season. But you've also been impressed with the Jets, haven't you, Ross?
I have. I think for me, they're the most exciting team in the A-League to watch. The way they play football, the way they pressure teams. It reminds me of the old days of you would hear about a team called Barcelona, or you lose the ball, you got 7 seconds to get it back. And you watch the way Jets play, they lose the ball, but the first thing they do is crowd the person that's got it. And they win it back very quickly. And once they've won it back, that's when they get the counter attack going, and they've got the speed going forward. They've got everything except when they go forward, they get caught sometimes. And on the turn, coming back, that's where they get grabbed. But they are an exciting team to watch. It's just they've got to work out how to, if they score 6, not to end up having the opposition score 7. It's a bit like Mopper said, it's the Ange style of football. You attack the opposition and it puts the pressure on them, doesn't it? They're just a great side to watch.
I think we saw that. Yeah. We saw that in that Sydney FC game they played in the first time around, where was it 4-1 to Sydney, I think?
It was,
but certainly got caught on the counter attack a fair few times. But I think Milligan's learning. He's a young coach, and I think he's adapted a little bit in that way. But Mopper, who are a couple of the players that have impressed you this season with the Jets?
Well, you know how much we love Will Dobson. I think the fan that wrote in there is absolutely spot on. I'm very interested to see how Zach Clough goes too. He'll bring a lot of excitement in. Great replacement for Paul Badalado. What a year he was having. It's such a bad loss there for the Jets. But look, I've been impressed with Lockie Rose. I think he's a real good striker. I like that number 9. He's real tough, physical, fast. He's good work rate. Not the polished player, but I think he's really added some value to the Jets. But yeah, look, I can't go past Will Dobson, and you know how much I love Berncello. I think he'll be another one. Surprised he's not getting a little bit more game time, but yeah, I think he's one for the future. Burgess, now he's back, will even that out, and obviously, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Clough fits in. But yeah, definitely great to watch, aren't they? And yeah, onward to the Jets. So it's making me watch their football more and more because it's just so good.
Yeah, I'll throw in as well a couple of players you missed there, Eli Adams, Ben Gibson. And I just want to touch on your point about Lockie Rose, current Golden Boot leader, we should mention too. But I think to both of your points in terms of the work rate the Jets have, I think it all starts from him at the top, because he's the one that's putting the pressure on the defense. And then you've got that line of 4, normally someone like a Taylor, Adams, it was Badalado, and probably like a Dobson, and they're the ones that are putting that next line of pressure on. So I think in terms of that setup, it's working really well for the Jets so far. So yeah, they've slow start, but they're making their way up the ladder now. I predicted them for 4th. I'm going to stick with that. I think they might be able to sneak into that top 4. What about you, Mopper?
Yeah, definitely around that 5th and 6th. They're going to fight those last 2 spots with the victory. I think the top 6 is sealed. I don't think anyone's breaking this top 6 that we've got. And I think, unfortunately, Brisbane will probably drop out of that now, and probably victory will pop in there. But look, 6 wins compared to 8 wins from last year as a season. The Jets have definitely on the rise. And I think these youngsters, the more football they're going to have, they're just going to get better. And look, Auckland's only lost twice, top of the league, and to Newcastle Jets. They've just definitely found a blueprint there. And against all the odds too, the resilience of 10 men and vice versa, characteristics that we haven't seen the Jets do. We know they can do it in parts with this young side. It's just about now learning to do it in a complete way, like Roscoe said.
I think to touch on that point, was something that Robbie Stanton mentioned so many times last season, that they were good in patches, or they were good for a game, but then they couldn't put it together for back-to-back games. And yeah, credit to Robbie Stanton for the development of these players up to the point of him leaving the club. But Mark Milligan certainly put his stamp on it. So yeah, exciting young group, the Jets. Where have you got them finishing, Ross?
I've got them finishing sixth. I just think, again, they're a young side. They're building, and if Milligan can keep all these players, that'll be the big thing. Without the big clubs from overseas looking at them and saying, "I want that player." If Milligan can keep them, or if by some token a big club from overseas comes in and says, "I want that player," make them pay for it. Make them pay
Yeah,
big
definitely.
so that that money
Yep.
goes back into Newcastle, because all around the Newcastle area it's just a place for building, and there's players coming out of that area for years. So I'd like to see Jets continue on.
Let's go to Perth Glory. They're currently ninth. Their record is 5 wins, 1 draw, and 6 losses. In pre-season, we spoke about how poor their results were coming off a season of turmoil where they had the least goals scored and the most conceded. Yeah, it's a shocking season last year for David Zulic in his first season. We mentioned that he was likely to be under pressure with a poor start. They brought in a host of defenders, including Brian Kaltak, Sam Sutton, Scott Wooten. They also got Shalbel Shamoon and Reece Bozanovsky from Western United. It's been awesome to see so many of those Western United players land at clubs and get game time. Matt Sutton was another one that came in from Western United to Perth on an injury replacement for Mark Birighitti. In terms of the mid-season review, David Zulic obviously sacked after 2 games. That slow start that we thought he might be in trouble if it happened. Adam Griffiths was appointed as the interim manager and then became permanent. Youngsters have been very good, particularly with injuries to senior players. They did lose Mark Birighitti, as mentioned, just before the start of the season. Their home support, I thought, has been incredible. That last game they had at home, the atmosphere was awesome. Tom Lawrence, GC's been brilliant this season. And just in the last couple of days, Matt Sutton, who originally signed on that injury replacement contract, has been given a 3-year deal. So, Ross, what have you made of Perth Glory so far this season? Obviously, got off to a bit of a slow start, which meant Zulic got moved on.
Yeah, I think they're a club. I've just got that they're slowly building. It might be a little bit too late for them to achieve big things this season. They've got a young coach with big ideas, and he's a very passionate person. It's a club again who have brilliant fans. The fans get behind that club when they're performing. So I can only see bigger and better things, but maybe not this year. Next year, I think you'll see a totally different Perth. Maybe a bit like the ones we used to see in the old days.
Well, for starters with the line, isn't it great to have a face of a football club and a coach that has those characteristics? It's just so good for football, and it's energizing to have these characters in there. We love it, and that's what creates the atmosphere, doesn't it? And I'm sure the players are thriving in that atmosphere. Probably the slow start come down in the poor pre-season. Just too many changes. They had so much player movement, didn't they? And got in so many players late too. And Lawrence was obviously adapting too from his big move from Rangers and previous to that derby. His experience is invaluable. He is a class player, and he's showing it now. Now he's adapted to the football over there. And look, it's just great to see them back, aren't they? After that shocking start, it's cost them dearly. Probably might even cost them a final spot, but still, you can't go past it. Like I said, 16 points this year, only 17 last year, and realistically, Jets are on 18 now, so they're only 2 points off fourth. So anything could happen with this group, but again, they've got some vulnerabilities, but I think once they learn together as they go along, they're going to be a competitive football team. We've definitely seen Griffiths change that. Every game they're in, right down the wire, and they're setting a very good tone over there. They're going to probably just miss out on the finals, but it won't be by much. I think I had them. Where did I have them? 11th. Did I have them 11th? Wow. They're definitely going to be just outside the playoffs as 7th. I think they've made some bold moves, and I think they're on the move. But unfortunately, I think that start will probably cost them a bit.
How good is it to see Adam Griffiths week after week and the way he does things with a smile on his face or normally like a little cheeky grin, but yeah, just a completely fresh way to manage a team. And you see it on the sidelines, when he's not getting what he needs out of the players, he's certainly out there barking some orders, but just his profile and I think that brightness that he brings to the league is so good. We've got a fan view here from Andrew. He says he thinks the Perth Glory youngsters match up with any other team in the league. Certainly got some talent over there. I pressed him on a few of the players. So you mentioned Reece Bozanovsky, Will Freeney, Sebastian Despotovsky, Diabru, Liz Lysky, just to name a few. And then he says there's some other youngsters coming in behind them. So definitely some positive signs for Perth Glory. And I think if Griffiths is going to be their long-term manager, he has the potential to bring this young group through. Tom Lawrence in the last couple of weeks has been absolutely fantastic. Reece Bozanovsky in that midfield, really good. Jaden Kocharski, before he got injured, looked pretty dangerous. And Matt Sutton, I was surprised that some other clubs didn't pick him up earlier from Western United, but I think he's been really good for them as well. Ross, where do you think they're going to end up? Do you agree with Mopper that they may have just left their run a little bit too late?
Yeah, I just think it'll just it's the fact that they had that bad start at the start of the season. I think they're starting to build something there, but as far as this year goes, I've got them at 9th, finishing 9th.
I originally had them in 10th. I think they might be a little bit higher than that, but unfortunately for me, they'll just be missing finals as well. Let's go to Sydney FC, probably one of the most informed teams in the whole league. They're currently second with a record of 7 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses. In the preseason, we looked at their star-studded team last season, failed to deliver on the field and they missed finals. They also had the chance to make the final of the ACL2 competition, but fell to Lion City Sailors in the semi-final. Tale seemed like he found it hard to balance his talented youth and his big-name stars. We thought he could come under pressure. With a slow start, they conceded the second most goals amongst top 9 teams and were very vulnerable on the break. Last season, they brought in a mix of talented youth, attacking foreigners, and experienced defenders. Lost Douglas Costa, Adrian Segacic, Anthony Caceres, and Jaden Kocharski. They've certainly turned their defence around. They had a bad first game against Adelaide, but then won 4 in a row before dropping the derby. They lost just 1 in their next 5. They're 3 from 3 at home. They only played 3 from home, but best defence in the league. We mentioned this on the pod on Sunday, conceding just 7, build on their experienced backline. But I think Tale's learned from last season. He's finding the opportunities for the youth in players like Ocon and Yuli and Quintal and Wallity, missing Joe Lolly, but also finding a way. Don't think their imports have absolutely hit the ground running, but certainly you can see some upside for them. Despite only playing 3 home games, they've only had to travel to Adelaide and Perth so far this season. So no doubt a bit of that is coming towards the back end of the season. But Mopper, I'll go to you. What have you made of Sydney FC, another big club that comes under heaps of scrutiny, but they're going okay so far, I think.
Look, we've seen the youth against Wrexham, didn't we? We've seen the excitement, and I think getting Paul Ocon back in the midfield, real good pass range player. But the big two for me, like you said, is in defence. Grant and Tassan have been absolutely fantastic. They're quality signings and have really tightened them up. And Devonish Mears has been fantastic. Their defence has been absolutely on top. And the good thing is for Sydney FC, they're back home this week. Their first home game at the Allianz on the 18th against Wellington. So their fans will be relieved to be back there. I think they'll be loved to play back there at the football ground at Allianz Stadium. So I think they've got a lot of upside. Tale was under huge pressure, wasn't he, at the start of the year about Sydney FC, obviously missing the playoffs, but 1 point last year. And I think their last game, I think it was against Melbourne City last year, 5-1 or something.
They only needed two. In their last two games, they only needed 1 point, and they couldn't get it.
Yeah. So, look, credit for Tale to turn it around because he was under a lot of pressure. And they're challenging Auckland, and I can't wait to see this rematch because obviously the postponement with the poor ground decision that was faced by Sydney FC with Allens and Leichhardt being out. I can't wait. It'll be the clash of the Titans, won't they? And hopefully that postponement now brings it back to Allens and we get a massive crowd that it deserves. But Sydney, you've got to take the hats off to them. Defensively fix that up and the rest of the football's flowed. And I think the great youth and balance that they've got around there, they're going to push on, aren't they? And, I tipped them to come fifth this year, but obviously they're right up there. They're going to be top two and they're challenging for the league title, aren't they?
And Ross, what have you made of Sydney FC? Good to see some of our young talent getting their opportunity. Any players that have stood out for you as well?
Well, definitely Ocon in the midfield. They have a good team, but they're vulnerable to injury. You got Lolly is out at the moment. I don't know for how long, but with the age of some of the defensive players, you've got a problem where players who come up against them who are fast and will put pressure on them. I just think, and Lolly again, he's a great player, but you've got to get him on the pitch, haven't you? And I don't have them finishing as high as you guys. Maybe I don't like Sydney. I don't know, but I just have Sydney in fifth spot. I just don't. I think a lot of sides are going to put pressure on them defensively.
I think the biggest question was their mentality, how they faced Melbourne City away, wasn't it? I thought it was a chance to really step up and shine, and it was like they put the weapons away, didn't they? And just played that low block.
Yeah.
It was quite extraordinary, and there is still that great question mark, but there's still a lot of quality in this side.
Yeah, I expect them to kick on back half the season. I think I take your point around the defence being of an age, but I still think that brings a lot of experience. And Garuccio and Ryan Grant have always had the speed, so I think even as they decline, they're still holding a bit of it. But I think, they're really going to be built on that defence being solid, which allows the players in front of them to thrive, and then Yuli and Ocon in that midfield together, I think forming a very nice pairing. But potentially injuries, they've got, as well as Joe Lolly, they've got Al Hassan Toure out as well, and then it's probably a matter of who steps up, whether that is a Quintal or an Abel Wallity. I wouldn't put them in the same class as some of those players, but if they can take their opportunity, you never know what might happen. So, I added them as fifth at the start of the season, but I expect them to be in that top 2 or 3 as well, based on how they're going at the moment. All right, boys, let's go to the Wellington Phoenix. They're currently 10th. Their record at the moment is 4 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses. In the preseason, we spoke about them falling away last season after being so good in Giancarlo Italiano's first season. Goal scoring was a massive problem. They scored just 27 goals in 26 games. Costa Barbarouses scored 10 of those, and of course, he's no longer at the club. They definitely needed to fill that void and add more goals. And they have suffered, probably similar to the Mariners, suffered from some key players leaving in the past few seasons, and they probably just went to the well a few too many times. They also lost all 3 of the New Zealand derbies. Half-season summary from them: it's hard to escape the high defensive line that they've been playing that's been very hit and miss. They've lost both New Zealand derbies so far, so that's 5 in a row they've lost there. They couldn't capitalise on the player advantage at home to Auckland. They have beaten Brisbane twice, which is a bit of an anomaly. They have improved their goal scoring mainly through Eberici Eze and Carlo Armiento, who have got 8 goals between them. But they've become more vulnerable at the other end, conceding the second most goals of any club and the second most XG conceded. So Yeah, like they've fixed one problem, but opened themselves up for another. But what have you made of the Wellington Phoenix, Ross?
Yes, I have to agree. I think one of their big problems is going to be the high back line, because against sides who have speed up front, like against Newcastle Jets and those sort of players, you know, and you've got quite a few teams in the comp that have got quick players going forward, and they're just going to put holes in them and come round them, come through them. There's just they're vulnerable. I've got them finishing 11th. Uh, I would have had them 12th, but if I could have, if I could have got the Mariners up a bit higher, but I just can't see the Mariners with the
Yeah,
problems they got.
yeah, they're a funny one, aren't they? Because they picked up that big result away to Brisbane, which was huge. But Mopper, then they turned it around with a disappointing first half against Adelaide United on the weekend, but got it back to 2-2. But again, I think it's that consistency, and you can see advantages of playing the high line in terms of them pressing and compacting the space. But as mentioned, it's just leaves them so vulnerable at the back.
Yeah, look, they've had a disappointing season last year and they haven't started too well this year. And I haven't had too many positive things to say, but they've shown good intent in the transfer window straight away. Bill Talamar might fix that central defence, that New Zealand cap Kiwi. He is a very good defender. So maybe that's the start. I think they need a couple more intense signings like that. Auckland FC's probably taken the shine off them, hasn't it? And Auckland FC seems to be the destination. So I think that statement signing of Bill Talamar is a great signing and a great intent from Wellington. Hopefully they can build on it. I want to see him do well. I want to see that derby grow. But it's going to take a few more players than what they've signed so far to really rise from the top, because the A-League top six, like I said, has just got way too much depth, and that's where Wellington really lack.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough second half of the season, in my opinion, for the Wellington Phoenix. I did have them finishing 11th, and I think I'm going to stick with that prediction. What about you, Mopper?
Yep, I predicted them to be down the bottom as well. I had them in 10th, but I think Western Sydney will overtake them, and I think they will drop down to 11th. But a good signing. I think they'll still be competitive. They're a little bit of a Heckle and Jide side, aren't they? But they can turn it on and they can lose the plot, like you said, with that high line. But yeah, look, at least they're competitive, at least, and it gives something for the fans to look forward to in a tight competition.
All right, mate, let's go to the Western Sydney Wanderers. Our last team to go through. They are currently sitting 11th. Their record is 3 wins, 3 draws, and 6 losses. In the preseason, we spoke about them losing a lot of goal scoring in Sapsford, Milanovic, Antonsen, as well as losing the midfield presence of Oscar Priestman. They lost one Mata too, but he wasn't really used, so not a huge loss for them. Alan Stajic signed an extension in the off-season after being on just a 1-year deal. They picked up some handy signings in Barbarousis, Angus Thurgate, another one of those Western United players, and Stephen Ugarkovic headed home as well. Alu Kuol, of course, came in from the Mariners, but the big question was, can they replace the goals, and will those new signings gel? The answer to probably both those questions is no, because it was a very poor start to the season. They beat the Mariners rather unconvincingly to pick up their first win, but they seem to have picked up in wins just when they've needed it. So they got the derby win over Sydney FC, and then, of course, just beat Melbourne Victory over the weekend. I think Sajic is under huge pressure still, though, to deliver on the field. Still looking for that midfield cohesion, but the defence has been okay. They've conceded the 5th least goals per game. As expected, the goal scoring is an issue, with the worst goals per game in the league at 0.8 goals per game. And recently they've lost Alex Bonatig to Portland Timbers for a club record fee. But we've spoken multiple occasions on the goal scoring woes for the Western Sydney Wanderers. They really need to fix it, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And it's hard when you get plundered, isn't it? Like Western Sydney, like you named those 4 players that they lost last year, and wow, they were quality players, and they finished high up the ladder last year in fourth as well. But how do you replace such 4 high-quality players that quick has been a problem for them. And even if you go back a year, Lockie Brook and that, and vice versa the year before. So they've got some decisions to make in January, and I don't think they need to make too many. As we say, if you fix your probably 9 that they need, and get Barilla and Barbarouses in better positions forward, as well as Crave. I think Crave is more of an attacking midfielder, but again, he gets sucked in that back half of the field. They want to see him up in the 10 or a bit higher, but unfortunately, they haven't been able to do it, and leading the line is a big problem for them, and they probably need a target man in there, and they've unfortunately seen Mitch Duke go to Macarthur. They're rivals in Western Sydney, so they've got to get out there and fix it, because if they don't fix it, they're going to remain where they are. They are a very competitive team. Their midfield is strong, but unfortunately they lack that clinical striker and goal scorer, which are very hard to find at every level, let alone Australia. So, who do they target? Who do they go for? I think they need to go overseas and try to find someone with a bit of international flavour. They've got a good transfer fee back, so go and reinvest it into someone that's going to push up the table, because Western Sydney Wanderers fans, the club is a big club. It has got a strong foundation there ever since their inception, and they probably deserve better than sitting second last. I know he's talked about, XG and all the exciting stats, but I just look at the table and go second last, and you're on 12 points. So go and fix what you need to fix.
Yeah, I'm definitely a manager under huge pressure, even if he doesn't admit it himself. Rossi saw plenty of Alu Kuol in his time at the Central Coast Mariners. Not the most prolific striker, but certainly going to bring plenty of energy, but it's just not what they need at the moment.
No, he's Kuol is a worker. He's a sort of player that can hold. He's got strength, hold the ball up. I'd like to see a quick player close to him, like a younger player maybe, even though Kuol's only young, but someone with a bit of speed who can Kuol, if he can hold the ball up and get someone to push the ball into a hole, you get someone running through. And like Mopper said, they haven't got a goal scorer. They can get there and they can create chances, but they just haven't got a finisher.
There's certainly some Australian players out there. Nick D'Agostino has been linked with a move back to the A-League. So, even that type of player, just anyone that's going to be able to put the ball in the back of the net for the Wanderers. They're pretty kind of rigid in their system in terms of this 4-4-2, and I think that's probably causing them a few headaches in terms of fitting some of those players in. But I think Alex Bonatic's a big miss for them. Pantazopoulos can slide almost anywhere across that back line. So they should be pretty grateful they've got him that can plug multiple holes. But yeah, unless they fix his goal scoring, I can't see them rising up the ladder too much, unfortunately. I had them as 8 at the start of the season. I think they'll be a little bit lower than that. What about you, Mopper?
Yeah, I had them 7th, just missing finals, but I do think they'll go above the ladder. I think they'll get past Wellington and be on probably Adelaide and Perth's tail, but it'll all come down to what they do in January, and even that might be too late, because they've left some points behind, haven't they, in the just first half of the year. So, yeah, I'll go 10th. I reckon I'll take over Wellington, but they'll still be very competitive. They're a very competitive side, and Sturgis plays some decent football. But yeah, like I said, just need that clinical striker. But I feel sorry for the club too, because losing those type of players all at once last year and the year before, you just can't continue to replace them at that rate. But again, they've got a good academy there. Maybe we might see some more youth come through, not sure, but they've definitely got a good setup. And look, I wish them the best of success, because when they're around the mark, definitely the A-League's in a better space.
Yeah, just before I get your prediction for where they'll finish, Ross, I think it's a good point you make, Mopper, because as you mentioned, they had a decent season last season, but I think in terms of bringing these crowd numbers back, it needs to be good seasons back to back to back to start to build something, because they can't afford to be having these poor seasons when they want to get somewhere close to what they had in their first couple of seasons in the league. So where have you got them finishing, Ross?
I thought they might have climbed up a little bit higher. I do have them finishing 7th. Maybe that's just hope for the fans there. I just think we need, like Mopper said, we need a club like Wanderers to be up near the top. We need them performing to bring the crowds back, because there was a time when they had very passionate fans who followed them everywhere, and when they were playing at home, that was again a ground that a lot of other clubs didn't want to go to. It's just the fan base they get passionate, and that puts extra player on the team. But I just
All
don't
right.
think it's going to be a great season for them.
All right, that's our assessment of all 12 teams and how they're going at the halfway point of the season. Now, I think I'm right in saying that we all had Auckland finishing as the premiers, and we
Yep.
also all had the Mariners getting the wooden spoon. Let's talk champions, winner of the final series. Mopper, what are you thinking?
I'm still going Auckland. Again, they just got too much depth, and they'll get the home finals and have the advantage and leading in. Look, I'm really intrigued to see Sydney FC play Auckland, to see how they measure up against each other and how well they tactically play against each other. So, but it'd be exciting if the Jets made the finals and faced Auckland. I think they'd be a bit nervous, wouldn't they, Auckland, if the Jets are in there? But no, I think this is Auckland's year. They're too professionally run on and off the pitch, and I think they'll win the double this year.
All right, Ross, who have you got as champions?
Well, initially, I had Auckland premiers. I just don't think, as Motti said, they're just so well run. It's a club that's so well structured, and their team is so well structured. It's like a brick wall. I don't think any teams can come past it. I'm a bit like Mopper. I just think Auckland for both. I just think they'll be the champions and they'll be the premiers.
I'm going to disagree with both of you. I'm going to stick
course.
with my pre-season prediction that Sydney FC will finish champions. Not the way that I thought their season would go. I thought they'd start slow and there might be some changes and they'd come home strong. But I think I've liked the way that they've recruited and I like their youngsters. So I think they've got a really good balance in their team. So to make finals and to sneak in as champions. Let's talk about the couple of individual awards. Golden Boot winner. It's a fascinating race at the moment. We've got Lockie Rose on 6, Efania Eze 5, Lockie Brook 5, Caputo 5, Virgos 5, Sam Cosgrove 5, Tom Lawrence 5, Harrison Sawyer 5, and then we've got 6 more players on 4 goals. I even heard someone say, I think it was Tommy Orr, say that he thinks Mitch Duke might even be able to sneak in there for the Golden Boot, even though he's only played half a season. But we'll see what happens with Duke. But Mopper, do you want to tell us your pre-season prediction, and are you still happy with that one?
Yeah, Lockie Brook 5, exciting winger and cutting back in and getting some more opportunity there. So I've still got Lockie Brook. It'll be a hard battle though. I think he's got a lot of competition. Eze's been fantastic. He's been a great signing for Wellington, and yeah, he might have nudged in front of Brook. I think he's got so many qualities, Eze. But yeah, Lockie Brook was my original decision, so I have to stick with that.
Yep, mine was Maxi Caputo, so glad to see him just behind Lockie Rose with 5 goals. Hopefully City's form turns around a little bit and he keeps getting those opportunities. He keeps scoring them in Asia instead of the A-League, so stop wasting those goals in Asia, please, Maxi. What about you, Ross? Who do you think is going to have the most goals in the season?
Well, I think Sam Cosgrove. I just think he is, to me, he's an out-and-out striker. He's the big bloke up front, hits the ball either foot. He's good in the air. Long throws from De Vries. Yep, he's my man.
All right,
He's playing
Johnny
with the
Warren
top
medalist
club.
time. Yep. Mopper, who was your pre-season prediction?
Dennis Genru was my prediction, and he started like a house on fire, but then got suspended and then struggled to get back into this team. He only got back into 11 because Melbourne Victory had a couple of players away, and now I just find it difficult where he plays in Melbourne Victory at the moment. So I think he's got an uphill battle, but still a quality player. The standout players for me has been probably Tom Lawrence from Perth, and he's been sensational. I can't go past Lockie Brook for his performances as well, but Jesus, Patrick Beach would obviously, I think, be at the top of the tree at the moment. I think he's been outstanding.
Yep, I had Maxi Burgess. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be anywhere near it. So I can't change my prediction, but if I could, I'd probably put Francis de Vries in there. I don't think they would give it to a defender anyway, but I think he's been very consistent and very solid for Auckland FC so far this season. What about you, Ross?
Mine is Juan Mata. I think Mata is just that standout player continually, week in, week out. Now that he's with a club where he does start, I think I can see him getting better every game. I just think he's had a good season.
All right, and now I'm going to ask for one more thing from you guys before we wrap it up. I'm going to ask for your bold prediction for the remainder of the season. I'm going to go first, and it's the Newcastle Jets to make the grand final, and they're going to knock out Auckland FC in the semi on their way there.
What about you, Roscoe? What do you got, mate?
It's probably something I'd like to see. However, I think Melbourne Victory will come through and perform, and with the strength of their crowd, I think they might surprise a few clubs, and they'll get through, and they won't end up on top, but you never know. They might just push their way all the way up to the top.
Very good. And my bold prediction, it will be that the crowds will bounce back. I think there's a lot of, being the tightness of the ladder, and a few clubs that probably underperformed from a marketing and community point of view last year have, settled in their sides like Perth and that, and I think their numbers will go up. And I'm looking forward to seeing if Sydney FC can pull a big crowd against Auckland. But I think crowds will come back. I think the football's been good. A lot of good transfer news in, and I'm hoping that the community and fans get behind it, and that's my bold prediction.
Love it, gents. Yeah, big show tonight. Good to go through all the A-League men's clubs with you two, and just give our thoughts on where we think they're at and where we think they might go for the remainder of the season. So thank you, Ross. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And thanks, Mopper. Any final thoughts for you?
Nah, thanks, boys, for the talk, and it's always great to talk Australian football, and we wish Australian football and the Mariners all the best in hopefully what will be a situation resolved, and we can get back to football and seeing the best of Australians youngsters and players in our A-League. And it's just exciting that we have a table where you look at it that anything's possible.
Thanks, gents, for your time. Thanks also for the fan interaction as well. We love to hear the passion from the fans and all your thoughts and opinions. So, really appreciate sending through your comments. But that's going to do us for tonight, gents. We'll be back on Sunday to record as usual. In the meantime, enjoy your football.
All the best. Thanks, Chief.